imagination. More theories his family would no doubt find either amusing or irritating. Well, don't hover in the doorway. Come sit down at the table. I'll give you a cup of tea. No, thank you, ma'am, I'm fine. He tried to keep his voice polite, but he could hear the rough edge to it. Would you refuse my hospitality? Her tone chilled him. After all I've done for your mother, would you truly offend me so? Connor walked from the doorway to the table. He could not risk refusing the witch, he could not risk the witch refusing to make more medicine for his mother. He sat on the edge of one of the rough wooden chairs. It wobbled with his weight. Looking down at the grain of the table, he focused his attention there. That's better. I thought you must have some manners. She placed a mug of steaming liquid in front of him. Drink up. Connor lifted the mug and smelled the brew. The translucent golden brown tea mixed with honey met his nostrils. The color and scent seemed harmless. He took a small sip. The taste was as sweet as the scent seemed harmless. The taste was sweet and as the smell, different from what he was used to, but not unpleasant. Another smile contorted the witchwoman's face, and the look made Connor's stomach cramp in discomfort. He intended to sit the mug back on the table, but the smell rising from the liquid tempted him, and he lifted it to take another drink. This one deeper. Maybe it would soothe the strange pain in his abdomen. For a moment, it seemed to help. She nodded, triumphant, and turned away from him. Back to the herbs she sorted. Connor's head began to feel light. His vision swam. He blinked several times. What was wrong with his eyes? Connor's stomach churned, and he lifted the mug, hoping the tea would calm him. This time the liquid seemed too thick and too sweet. It clung to his mouth and throat as it slid along his back and into his stomach. A heavy sensation settled over Connor's body, and he set the mug down before he spilled it. His head felt odd, his vision thick. With effort, he focused on the witch. A strange aura surrounded her, something he had never seen before. As if feeling his eyes on her, she turned to him, a satisfied smirk on her lips. The job's done. There's no going back now. Are the herbs ready? Connor asked, trying to stand. His legs felt weak, and he fell. His back scraped the edge of the chair as his knees hit the rough wooden floor. The witch never moved from the fire. Oh, your mother's herbs. She waved a dismissive hand. Her voice was calm. I suppose your father will have to send out Minna for them. His youngest can be so unreliable. Such a disappointment, Connor. His hair is too light. His eyes are too blue. Is he really even the miller's son? His brother is so much darker. And the imagination that Connor has. Connor grasped the table edge and tried to pull himself off the floor, shaking his head. I don't understand. The pain hit, a sharp stab in the chest. Connor gasped, releasing the table. He doubled over. His breath hissed between clenching teeth. You'll do well, strong and healthy. Everything a protector should be, the witch muttered, turning her back on him again. Connor fought against the pain, trying to inch his way towards the door. His arms and legs refused to obey the commands he gave them. The harder he fought, the more intense the agony became. The pain raced from his chest to his back. It snaked up his spine and tightened, squeezing him. Connor fell to his knees, onto the floor, his cheek hitting the uneven boards. They felt cool against his burning skin. Terror followed the course of the pain, wrapping Connor in its fist. Curled in a ball on the floor, he moaned. His arms and legs twisted, joints cracked and popped. He felt fire on his skin. He cried out in panic and did not recognize the sound of his own voice. The cry was too high-pitched, more a whine. What was happening? He tried to stretch to ease the pain, tried to uncurl his limbs, but they would not work the right way. His legs bent at the wrong angles. He opened his eyes, and gray filled his vision. Trying to lift his head, he found his neck moved wrong. What had the witch done to him? He panted for air, past another ripple of searing pain. Yes, panted. He could feel his mouth open, his breath coming in short little gasps. His tongue hung out too long. It scraped his teeth, and they were too sharp. Gray. All he saw was gray. Answer just a couple of questions really quickly. One of them being, can wolves fish? Where'd it go? Hold on. Yes, they can. Wolves can, in fact, fish. And there's a picture of a wolf fishing. These were a couple of things I've researched for my book. I wanted to know, can wolves fish? Yes, they can. In my book, Connor fishes as a wolf. And I actually looked that up because I wanted to be somewhat accurate. The other question. Can wolves see red? If you go online, there's actually quite a bit of controversy on this one. Some sites say yes, some sites say no, some sites say maybe. The predominant research suggests that yes, they can see red. One quote says, although little research has been done into a wolf's ability to see color, it is believed that they may be partially colorblind. Wolves have only red and blue photoreceptors in their eyes, unlike humans, who have red, green, and blue photoreceptors. Tests on wolves where red, blue, yellow, and green dots were put on clean snow showed that they often detect the red and yellow stains. This could be because they associate these colors with blood and urine and have little interest in the other colors. So, the predominant research seems to indicate that they can see red. The reason why that is significant is because in my book, the only color that Gray can see is red. Oh, his name changes to Gray too. So it seems that they can probably see red. I wanted to be a little bit accurate in my fantasy made-up world. But I also figured since it is a fantasy made-up world and there is magic involved, if he could only see red, that really was okay. At this point, I've covered pretty much all I have to cover, but I wanted to open it up and ask you guys if you had any questions. Yeah.
I've got a quick one already. What's the overlap between sci-fi and fantasy?
Oh, okay. So I write sci-fi and fantasy. My short story, A Decade of Scottsdale. You know how I said it wasn't about Scottsdale at all, Arizona? Right. It's not. It's actually a science fiction story. Oh, okay. The first novel I wrote that lives in my filing cabinet is a science fiction story that's actually related to the short story I wrote, A Decade of Scottsdale, and is also a science fiction novel. The overlap, well, some people would say there is none, and some people would say there is a lot. They both fall under the title of speculative fiction. Speculative fiction is anything that kind of asks the question, what if? What if there is something impossible that were suddenly possible? For example, what if space travel were possible? That would be science fiction. Unless your space travel were possible because of magic, and then it's fantasy. Because it's magic. Right. So technology is kind of your science fiction. Magic is your fantasy. So my novel would be fantasy because it's magic. But then you've got all kinds of genres within fantasy. You've got urban fantasy, which takes place in the here and now. And then you've got, like, well, this is a fairy tale retelling, which is its own kind of thing. But high fantasy takes place with elves and goblins and that kind of, like Tolkien. And I guess The Wizard of Oz would kind of, or not The Wizard of Oz, why did I say that? The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is what I was thinking, is kind of high fantasy. I said that because you're doing the play. My little son's in the play, The Wizard of Oz, so it was on the brain. But yeah, so you get into that kind of thing. So. Under speculative fiction, sometimes horror even falls under speculative fiction too. So, yeah.
So, do you think you would write another sci-fi novel sometime, or maybe even a different genre, or gonna be?
I would love to.
Christine, when you answer, can you repeat the question, please?
Oh, certainly, of course. So the question is, would I write another science fiction novel? I would love to. And I currently kind of have two stories going. And what I'm doing right now is I'm writing 1 week I write on one story, which is the sequel to Red and Gray, and the next week I write on the other story, which is completely and totally different, which is how I keep them separated. So I'm writing alternating weeks on alternating stories, which means that they're both moving very slowly. But they are totally different stories. The other one is actually a post-zombie event story with no actual zombies in it, because in order for it to be a zombie, it has to be dead, and my zombies aren't dead. So, yeah. So yeah.
Horror, maybe.
Yeah, it's kind of horror, but I would also think it was speculative. Well, like I said, it falls under the umbrella of speculative fiction. I would think it's more like dystopian future, kind of, you know? Yeah, so, I don't know. Yes?
Who are the audiences for Red and Gray, and what do you hope that they get out of it?
So who are the audiences for Red and Gray? First off, I've told my oldest he can read it when he's 15. That was my cutoff for it. My best friend in Florida let her son read it when he was 11. I thought that was a little young. I consider it an adult fantasy novel. What am I hoping they'll get out of it? I hope they really love the story. I hope they find the ties between it and Little Red Riding Hood. There are quite a few, although it is not the classic Little Red Riding Hood. I hope that they get... it's a story about someone learning about who they are. And I hope that they get that from it. That's what I got when I was writing it, which I didn't know going into it. I thought it was answering the question of, why does he need that food? And I hope I clearly answered that question too. But in the end, it's really about the growth of two characters and them finding out who they are. So, yeah. Yes.
Are there any generic lines that you slipped into the book from the fairy tale?
Yes, there are. There is at least one line that I slipped in from the fairy tale.
Which is?
Yes, I see what big teeth you have. I actually marked the page that's on too, because I considered reading that one too. But what?
You've got to say that.
Yeah, it had to be in there. It just had to be in there. In my next book, am I going to answer a question? Kind of. There's a lot of well, let me put it this way. In the world that my characters live in, there's a lot more going on than they realize is going on. The world's a lot bigger than they know of in this book. They live in a small town, and they've never been out of their small town. Well, my female protagonist has never been out of her small town. And she's going to find out the world's a lot bigger than what she knows it is. So yeah, there'll be some questions answered, and there'll be a lot more questions asked. So yeah.
Do you want there to be a movie made from your book? Why or why not?
Do I want there to be a movie made for my book? Doesn't every author dream that someone will turn their book into a movie? Yeah. I think it would be amazing to see my movie up on the big screen, just because, like, I'd be seeing my book, and, like, I'd be seeing my characters come to life. That would be the most awesome thing. Like, I see it in my head all the time. They, like, okay, so, like, my characters talk to me. This is, it's not as creepy as it sounds, okay? It really isn't. Like, people say, why do you write? I write to stop the voices in my head. If I write them down, they stop talking to me. No, they don't. They just say other things. And then I have to write that down, too. I finish one story, and they start telling me another one. No, I would love to see it become a movie. Do I ever foresee that happening? No, realistically, I don't. They already made a Little Red Riding Hood movie, and I watched the whole thing going, that's wrong. That's not how it goes. They obviously haven't read my book. Really, I really did. Ask my husband. He's like, I'm like, that's so wrong. They didn't read my book. Do they not know that's not how the story goes? Because obviously mine's right. Hello. So yeah, I seriously doubt that would ever happen, but I can dream.
I have a question about how you do it all. Some of our other authors are parents, Molly is, but you have 3 and you have a full-time job and you do volunteer work and you write, not just one book, but you got 2 books going, so do you ever sleep?
How do I do it all? Okay, so yes, I do. I do have 3 kids. They're amazing. I do have a full-time job. I do volunteer work at the school, and I do have 2 books going right now. I have the most wonderful, supportive husband on the planet. And I don't say that lightly. I really do have the most wonderful, supportive husband on the planet. He will sometimes just take the kids out of the house so I can sit down and write. I do sleep occasionally. And my kids are also fantastic. They know that when they come in and I say, shh, mommy's writing, that means that they should probably leave the room. Or they'll come in and they'll say, Mom. How I relax is by writing. And they can all tell if I haven't written in a week because mommy gets crabby. Because it's what I do to relax. And like I said, it's not what I do to get paid, it's what I do to relax. It's what I do to decompress. It's how I get the stress out, I go to my own little world and I write it down. So yeah, that's where I go. Unfortunately, the Puget Sound is right out our living room window, and I can see it. And sometimes when I'm writing, I will look out there and be like, oh, look at that. Look at the ships passing.